Hello, my name is Olivia, and the last place I thought I'd be humiliated was my own sister's engagement party. I walked in holding my daughter's hand, trying to breathe, trying to belong, when I heard the groom laugh and whisper, "Even the stinky countrywoman and her kid were invited." Then he waved at security, and my family looked away like I didn't exist. I stood there, frozen, wondering how it got this cruel, and whether I should disappear again, or finally let the truth walk in behind me. Before we go on, tell me, what time is it where you're listening from, and where are you right now? Leave a comment, because what happened next changed everything. I held my daughter's hand a little tighter as we stepped out of the car. The wind caught the hem of her dress, and she clung to my side like she always did when she sensed I was holding something in. The hotel loomed in front of us, tall glass, soft golden lights spilling from crystal chandeliers inside, valet attendants who looked like they didn't make eye contact unless you wore a certain kind of suit. We didn't belong here, and I knew that from the moment my heel clicked on the polished marble steps. Inside, the ballroom was exactly what I'd expected. Soft jazz playing somewhere behind the buzz of small talk, rows of wine glasses catching light like mirrors, linen so white it hurt my eyes. The kind of place where people didn't spill things, where women wore heels that cost more than I made in a week, back when I still worked for someone else. I adjusted my daughter's cardigan and forced a small smile. 1 hour, I whispered. We just say congratulations and go. She nodded. She was too young to understand tension, but she felt it. She always did. We stepped inside. Conversations dipped the moment we entered, just for a second, but enough. Heads turned, not all at once. But in that way people do when they're pretending not to. I could feel it like static in the air, crawling up my arms. My daughter looked up at me. Her lips parted, just barely. Her grip on my hand got stronger. "It's okay," I murmured. "We're just here to say hi." No one said anything to us, not right away. We passed 2 tables. A woman gave a tight smile, then turned back to her drink like the wine had something to say. My cousin, who used to sleep over at my place all through high school, walked past without a word, just a flick of her eyes at my shoes. We kept walking. I looked for my sister, and then, right as we were crossing toward the far end of the room, I heard it. It wasn't loud. That was the thing. If it had been loud, maybe someone would have stopped it. But it was quiet, tucked between 2 chuckles and a sip of champagne. "Look at that. Even the stinky countrywoman and her kid were invited." A man's voice, low, unconcerned, like he was talking about the weather. Then, a chuckle, dry, not amused, just polite. My stomach clenched. I didn't stop walking, but I heard every syllable again in my head, like someone had hit rewind. I didn't have to look. I already knew whose voice that was. The groom, my soon-to-be brother-in-law. He leaned over to another guest as we passed, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. He didn't even look our way. There it was, the line, and he'd crossed it like it wasn't even there. I slowed down. My daughter glanced up again. I tried to smile, but it felt heavy, like my face wasn't listening. He didn't stop. He didn't care if I heard. Then came the gesture. He barely lifted his arm, gave a small wave toward one of the staff, security, in a black blazer near the buffet. It wasn't angry. He didn't yell. It was more like he was pointing out someone who'd left their coat on the floor, a mess to be handled, not worth a second thought. I froze, not out of fear, but because my brain was suddenly 5 steps behind my body. I felt like I was watching it happen from somewhere else. My legs weren't sure if they should walk or run. My daughter tugged at my arm. "Mom?" Her voice was soft, too soft for a room this loud. I looked toward the front of the ballroom, toward the table where my sister sat, laughing at something her fiancé had said moments before. She glanced up, saw me. Her smile faltered. And then, nothing. No wave, no nod, not even a raise of the eyebrows. She turned back to her champagne, picked it up, and sipped. To her right, my mother stared straight ahead. Her jaw clenched. She didn't blink. My father, always the rational one, was studying the pattern in the carpet like it was the most fascinating thing he'd seen all year. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was somewhere else, somewhere between shock and understanding. They weren't going to stop this. No one was. The man from security approached, hands folded politely in front of him, voice low. "Ma'am, I'm gonna have to ask you to—" "I know," I cut in. I wasn't going to give them the show they wanted. I reached for my daughter's hand again, this time wrapping my fingers around hers tighter than before. We turned toward the door. Behind us, the music didn't pause. The laughter didn't lower. No one stood up. It was like we'd never been there at all. The air outside hit harder than I expected. Colder. I didn't know if it was the temperature or the shame clinging to my skin like something I couldn't wash off. My daughter's shoes tapped against the concrete as we stood just beyond the entryway. Then, quietly, "Mom, did I smell bad?" It wasn't a joke. She wasn't mocking the words. She'd heard them. Understood just enough to wonder if she was the reason they didn't want us there. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. She looked up at me. Her cheeks were pink from the wind, eyes full of questions I didn't want her to have yet. And before I could answer, before I could figure out what to say that would protect her and tell the truth at the same time, I heard it. The low rumble of an engine pulling up behind us. Smooth, polished. Not the kind of car you hear every day. And that's when I realized they thought it was over. They thought the worst of tonight had already happened. They were wrong. The engine grew louder behind us, but I didn't turn around. Not yet. I kept my eyes on the pavement, on the little pebbles caught in the seams between concrete slabs, on the pale pink of my daughter's shoes scuffed at the toes. Her fingers wrapped around mine like they always did when the world got confusing. People kept walking past us, guests stepping outside for air, for a call, for a break from pretending to be polite. Not one of them looked at me. Or maybe they did, but only when they thought I wasn't looking. I caught murmurs carried by the wind, clipped whispers wrapped in silk and smugness. She should have known better. Why even show up? Some people just don't get the hint. I focused on her breathing, the way it came in small, shallow puffs through her nose. I didn't realize I was holding mine until my chest started to ache. I let it go, slowly, so she wouldn't notice. She looked up again. This time, her voice was smaller than before. "Was it me?" I crouched down, my knees cracking a little as I lowered myself. Her face was only inches from mine, and I saw the red marks where she'd been pressing her lips together too tightly. "No, baby, it wasn't you." She searched my face, not for the words but for the part I wasn't saying, and she found it. Kids always do. "I thought it was a party," she whispered. "I thought we were invited." I opened my mouth, then closed it. I had nothing to offer her that would fix this, so I pulled her into me instead. Her arms wrapped around my neck like a reflex. I kissed the top of her head and let her stay there. Behind us, the ballroom kept humming. Laughter drifted out every time someone opened the door. I stood, brushing the back of my dress off like it mattered. The two security guards hadn't moved. One had his hands folded in front of him, gaze politely distant. The other one watched me. Not mean, not kind, just present. Like he wasn't paid to care, but he had his own opinions. They didn't say anything. They didn't have to. Their presence said it all. "You've been removed. Stay gone." I almost asked them if they were proud of themselves. Almost. But there was no point. This wasn't their decision. They were just following instructions, given by people who wore nicer shoes and smiled tighter smiles. Through the ballroom's tall glass doors, I could see them. My sister. She was smiling now. Her hand rested lightly on his forearm as she laughed. She didn't even glance toward the entrance. I looked toward our parents. Mom had her arms crossed, fingers tapping slowly on the satin of her purse. Her mouth was a hard line, like someone had drawn it with a ruler. Dad still hadn't looked up. I watched them a little longer than I should have, maybe hoping one of them would break. Just a flicker of acknowledgement. Just a shift in their seat. Something to say. We saw what happened. We don't agree. Nothing. That was the moment it hit me. Their silence wasn't awkwardness. It wasn't confusion or surprise. It was permission. They had decided what side of the room they stood on, and it wasn't ours. I straightened up and felt something move inside me. Not pain, not even anger, really. More like the last thread of hope snapping clean. I wasn't going to cry. Not here, not now. My daughter tugged on my hand again, her eyes darting toward the parking circle. "Who's that?" I turned just in time to see headlights sweep across the pavement. The engine that had been humming behind us rolled closer, slow and steady. It was a black car, newer model, the kind that moved like it had nothing to prove. Not flashy, not loud, just confident. The security guards turned to look, the one who'd been staring at me finally breaking his focus. The ballroom doors opened again. More guests filtered out, cigarettes, heels clicking, a man checking his watch like he was trying to time the universe. Someone else laughed. That voice again, his voice, the groom's. He was near the entrance now, joking with a small group of friends. I could hear him clearly. Something about handled and didn't think they'd actually show up. He didn't see me watching. He thought we were gone. That's what made him comfortable enough to be honest. That's what they all thought. Silence meant we'd accepted it. That walking away meant defeat. They were wrong. I didn't know yet what I was going to do, but I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't be leaving with my head down. Not again. The car rolled to a stop at the curb. The engine cut. It was like the noise drained from the entrance all at once. No more chatter, no more jokes, no more pretending. People turned to look, but not at the car, at me. For the first time that night, they weren't watching the couple inside the ballroom. They were watching me. The car sat at the curb like it had all the time in the world. Its headlights dimmed, engine running low and steady. Still, no one stepped out. No door opened. The air shifted, like the moment before a storm when everything goes quiet. Not peaceful, just expectant. People near the entrance stopped pretending they weren't watching. I could feel their eyes flick between the car and me. And even though I was facing away from the ballroom, I didn't need to see their expressions. I'd seen them before, curious but careful not to get involved. Entertained but detached. I didn't move, I didn't speak. I just stood there, one hand still wrapped in my daughter's, the other clenched around the frayed strap of my purse. The longer we stood there, the heavier it all felt. Like the weight of everything unsaid in my life had followed me here, bundled up and strapped to my back. And for a second, I wanted nothing more than to walk away, to disappear before anything else could be taken from me tonight. But I stayed. I stood still and let myself feel all of it. And in that stillness, a memory surfaced, sharp and unwanted. It was my sister's college graduation, years ago. I'd flown in, bought a new dress I couldn't really afford, even baked cookies for her friends at the after-party. The whole evening, I hovered at the edge of the room, smiling, offering to take photos, staying out of the way. Later, when she saw me near the podium, she smiled but leaned in and said softly, "Let's not make this awkward, okay?" Then she stepped away and wrapped both arms around her best friend for a photo. I remembered nodding, smiling like I didn't mind. I'd told myself, she's just tired. She didn't mean it that way, but she did. They all did. I wasn't cut out. I was quietly folded. It hadn't been obvious at the time, not like tonight. Back then, it was smaller things. Being left out of planning calls. Receiving the address to the event, but not the dress code. No one ever said I didn't belong. They just didn't include me. That was the trick. The pain didn't come from being shoved out. It came from being overlooked so completely that your absence didn't even register. I was always the one they didn't have to worry about. She's easygoing. She understands. She won't make a fuss. At the time, it felt like a compliment. I thought I was being kind, supportive, mature. But what I really was silent. And silence had taught them they could count on me to disappear whenever it made things smoother for them. I felt it now, this hollow echo inside me I hadn't even realized was there. Years of little dismissals, of being the one who stepped aside to keep the peace. Years of agreeing to things I didn't agree with, smiling at jokes that made me feel small, nodding while someone else's voice always led the conversation. I helped build this dynamic. I trained them to treat me this way. And it hit me hardest when I looked down at my daughter. She was still watching the car. Her face was neutral, but I could see it in her posture, how still she stood, how quiet, how careful. She was learning. She was picking up all the same unspoken rules I had absorbed years ago. Stay out of the way, don't speak up, don't be a problem. No. Not her, not again. This ends with me. I wouldn't raise her to shrink herself to make others comfortable. I wouldn't teach her that being easy is something noble if it comes at the cost of being seen. I bent down and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "You didn't do anything wrong," I told her again, this time slower, firmer. She nodded, but her eyes didn't fully believe me. That would take time. Behind us, the laughter started again. The ballroom doors opened briefly, and more guests stepped outside. Their voices rose and fell in that practiced way people speak when they think they're better than whoever they're talking about. I didn't hear my name, but I didn't need to. I knew exactly how that room had moved on. Like I was a hiccup in the program, something that had been handled and brushed away. And they thought that was it, that the story had ended with security leading me outside and everyone else returning to their drinks and small talk. They thought the silence meant I'd accepted my place. They didn't realize silence wasn't surrender. The car engine finally went quiet. I heard a door click open, but I didn't turn around. I already knew who was stepping out. He shut the door gently behind him. No slamming, no rush. Just a soft click that felt louder than it was because the whole driveway had gone still. He straightened his jacket with one smooth motion, ran a hand down the front of it, and took a few slow steps forward. No one spoke. You could feel the air shift, like someone had adjusted the lighting without touching a thing. The kind of shift that comes when a room realizes someone important has just walked in, but they're not sure how or why. I didn't look at him, not directly. I didn't need to. I saw it on the faces around us. Guests lingering too long near the entrance. Security exchanging brief, unsure glances. One of them stood a little straighter. Another stepped back, not out of fear but uncertainty. They didn't recognize him. Not exactly. But they recognized what he carried. Presence. He wasn't flashy. His suit was simple. His walk unhurried, but something about him said, "You're not the one in charge anymore." My daughter felt it too. Her fingers curled tighter around mine, but she didn't look scared, just alert. Curious, maybe? The man didn't acknowledge the onlookers. He made his way toward us like we were the only people there. I felt the heat of the lights behind me from the ballroom, the weight of the eyes that still hadn't decided if they should be afraid. He stopped just beside me, close enough that I could smell the faint scent of cedar and cold air on his coat. He looked down, not at me, but at her. "You okay?" he asked, quiet, but not tentative. She nodded, unsure, eyes wide but steady. Then, and only then, did he lift his gaze to me. There was no question in his expression. No, what happened, or why are you out here? He already knew, maybe not the details, but enough. I gave him a small nod, not in greeting, but in understanding. Inside, the groom finally noticed. I saw it through the glass doors. At first, he just looked toward the commotion, probably assuming it was more guests arriving. But then something in his face shifted, a flicker of confusion, maybe even annoyance. He gestured, sharp and impatient, as if to say, "Take care of it." But no one moved. Security hesitated. A few guests stepped further back, instinctively giving the man space. One of them asked under their breath, "Who is that?" Nobody answered. That was when my sister reappeared at the edge of the doorway. She caught sight of me again, saw the man beside me. Her hand, which had been resting lightly on her husband's arm, dropped. She whispered something to him. His mouth twisted like he'd just bitten into something bitter. The groom stepped forward, brushing past a couple lingering guests. He held himself like he still believed he was the main character, that all this could be swept aside with a smirk and a few clipped words. He walked out into the cool air with that same smug energy he wore all night. "Is there a problem here?" he said, loud enough for others to hear. "Because if someone's lost, I'm happy to—" The man next to me didn't even look at him. He turned slightly, not much, just enough, and addressed the security guard on the left. "Please step back." That was it. 3 words, even tone. No raised voice, no explanation. But something in the way he said it made the guard blink and move without thinking. He stepped back like he'd been given a command he didn't realize he'd follow, until he already had. The groom's mouth opened, but nothing came out. The man hadn't acknowledged him, not once. And that unsettled him more than anything that had happened all night. More guests were coming to the glass now. The mood had shifted. Whispers sounded different, less amused, more curious. Phones that had been raised for selfies or video now lowered. People sensed something was happening, something unscripted. My parents were among the faces at the doorway. My mother's arms were crossed now. My father stood stiffly beside her. They looked older than they had a few minutes ago, smaller, like the weight of years they'd kept hidden from me was finally showing. The groom tried to recover. "This is private property," he said, forcing a laugh. "We're in the middle of an event." Still, the man didn't respond, not to him. He looked at me again, calm, patient. Then finally, he turned just enough to address the space behind us. And he said it. He said my name. Not a nickname. Not the shortened version my family always used when they wanted something. He said it full, with clarity and intention. He said it loud enough for everyone to hear. My name echoed, and it didn't stop at the edges of the crowd. It moved through them like a wind that carried weight. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned. This time not out of politeness, but because something had shifted. I felt it in my spine first. Not pride, not relief. Something rawer than that. Exposure. It's a strange thing, being called by your name after so many years of being background noise. I wasn't ready for the sound of it, not like that, not in front of them. Suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. And instead of feeling strong, I felt naked. There's a difference between being forgotten and being remembered publicly by someone who sees all the parts of you, especially the ones you've spent your life trying to shrink. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there, like every breath had to be filtered through the question. What now? Then I saw her, my mother. She stepped forward as if on cue, the way someone might react when they realize they're not in control of the story anymore. Her face had that tight-lipped softness she used when she wanted to look maternal in front of others. My father cleared his throat. It didn't sound like emotion, more like someone preparing to say something calculated. And my sister, she just froze, caught halfway between the ballroom and the sidewalk. Her eyes darted between me and the man beside me, like she couldn't decide which side she was supposed to be standing on now. It was too late for all of them. I knew it, and I think they did too. But still, they tried. "Let's not blow this up more than it already is," my mother said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. She smiled the way people do when they're faking calm, like they're offering peace when really what they want is for you to disappear quietly. Before I could respond, the groom let out another laugh. Bigger this time, too big. He stepped forward and said, "This has been one big misunderstanding. I'm sure she's just overwhelmed." He didn't say my name. He never had. "Come on," he added, waving his hand in my direction like he was shooing a child. "You're making this into a scene. You're better than that, aren't you?" That last line, "you're better than that," landed in a way nothing else had all night. Because I used to believe it. I used to think that walking away quietly was proof of grace. That swallowing shame made me stronger. My daughter pressed in closer. I could feel her little hand against my coat, warm and still. She didn't understand the words, but she understood tone, the tension, the way everyone was holding their breath. And I realized this wasn't about me anymore. Whatever I did next, she would remember. Not the words, they blur at that age, but the way I stood, whether I shrank or stayed. And in that moment, I almost chose the old path. I felt it pulling me. My legs wanted to move. My mouth wanted to say, "It's fine. Let's just go." I wanted to protect her from all of it. The judgment, the eyes, the weight of what it means to stand still when the whole world wants you to vanish. But I also knew walking away again wouldn't protect her. It would teach her. It would teach her that peace is earned by silence. That dignity means disappearing when others are uncomfortable. That being better means swallowing pain so no one else has to see it. And I couldn't do that to her, not anymore. So I didn't move, I didn't speak. I just stood up straighter, barely. Just enough to let my body say what I wasn't ready to say out loud. I'm not leaving. The man beside me didn't touch me, didn't speak, but he was there, solid, still, silent. The tension in the air didn't break. It deepened. I felt my mother's eyes on me. I felt the groom getting ready to speak again. He was smiling. He thought he had the last word. He opened his mouth full of confidence and certainty, and the belief that no one would challenge him. And he didn't realize he was about to give me exactly what I needed. The air shifted the moment the groom took that step forward, not rushed, just confident. Like a man stepping onto a stage he believed belonged to him. He raised his voice, not shouting, just loud enough for people to stop pretending not to watch. "Look," he began, his hands open like he was offering a gift. "This seems to have taken a turn no one expected." Then he smiled, measured, rehearsed. "I think we've all had enough excitement for one night." He glanced at me, then at the man beside me, then back at the crowd. His words were coated in honey, but the shape of them was sharp. I understand emotions are high, weddings are complicated for some. He said that last part like he was letting me down easy, like I was fragile, like I should thank him. And the worst part? Some people nodded. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to tilt the weight of the moment sideways. Then he turned directly to the guests behind him and said, "She's had a lot going on. It's easy to misunderstand things when you're under stress." He wasn't even pretending to talk to me anymore. He was performing, and I watched it land. A quiet ripple moved through the guests. Murmurs, uncertain glances, someone half laughing like they didn't want to be caught siding with anyone, but also didn't want to seem humorless. Then came the next blow, quieter, but sharper. "She married well. he said, like it was a compliment. You know how it is. Sometimes people feel bigger in someone else's shadow. I felt the sting before I understood the shape of the sentence. That's what he thought this was. Not about what they did, not about what they erased. Just another woman who got lucky and decided to act out for attention. A few faces turned to me, half curious, half dismissive, and I knew that look. It wasn't new. It was the same one I'd seen growing up, when I spoke too softly to be heard and was praised for being easygoing. The kind of look people give when they've already decided what role you're supposed to play. That was when I realized I wasn't being pushed out. I was being erased, again. My eyes drifted to my parents, standing together now near the ballroom doors. My mother didn't even fake concern this time. My father stared past me like I wasn't there. And my sister? She had her arms crossed, her mouth set in that tight line she used when she was afraid things might not go the way she wanted. No one moved, no one came forward. They were letting it happen. And for a second, I wanted to let it happen too. Because if I let it drop now, everything could reset. He'd win, sure, but I'd be left alone. And there's a kind of quiet in that. But deep down, something started tightening. Not anger, not even defiance. Just a quiet, steady refusal. I didn't need to convince them of anything. I just needed to stop believing the version of myself they'd built. The groom stepped closer, his voice louder now. If there's a problem, he said, I'm sure the hotel would be happy to get someone from management. Someone who actually understands what's going on here. He was smiling like he'd already won. Unless, he added, turning his gaze on me like a dare, you have some proof of this little misunderstanding? There it was. He thought truth was something he could control by talking louder, by owning the room, by assuming no one would push back. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The man beside me, who had been silent since stepping out of the car, finally moved. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't make a scene. But he took one step forward, and that was enough. Because even without knowing exactly who he was, they understood what kind of man doesn't flinch under pressure, the kind who doesn't need to explain his presence. The groom didn't see it. He kept talking, kept smiling. His confidence was peaking, and then, that was the moment he asked the wrong question. To the wrong person. He pointed, casually, arrogantly, toward the man beside me and said, then maybe he should explain why he's here. The question hung in the air, smug and certain. He thought it would end things, but instead, it began something. One of the hotel staff, a younger man in a crisp navy vest, had been lingering nearby, clearly unsure whether to interfere. At the question, he stepped aside and spoke into a discreet earpiece. A few seconds later, a more senior-looking manager arrived, clipboard in hand, posture tight. The groom shifted his weight with exaggerated patience. He flashed that performative smile again. Could someone please verify who this gentleman is and why he's interfering in our event? No one answered right away. The manager didn't look at the groom. He looked at the man standing beside me. Mr. Klein, the manager said carefully, we've been notified of your arrival. I apologize for the delay. Your access to all levels has been reinstated, per corporate. Then he turned to me, expression softening. And Ms. Brooks, of course. Anything you need tonight is available to you. The staff is aware. My name, clearly spoken, in front of everyone. I didn't respond, not yet. I just stood there and watched something invisible shift. The groom's expression flickered. He looked from the manager to me, then back again, confused. Wait, you know them? Yes, sir, the manager replied, still not looking at him. Their names are on the ownership file. It hit like a dropped tray. You could hear it, not a sound, but a ripple. Conversations halted, feet shuffled. Some of the guests turned to each other, blinking, recalibrating everything they thought they understood about this moment. About me. Someone whispered, "Ownership?" The groom barked out a nervous laugh. "That has to be a mistake. She doesn't. This is ridiculous. This isn't her kind of place." He meant it. He really believed it. He believed the version of me he'd been feeding the crowd would hold up longer than the truth now speaking for itself. The manager didn't reply. He simply handed over the clipboard to another staffer, then stepped back. And just like that, the space wasn't his anymore. The groom was still talking, rambling now. "There's no way. She was just, she married into, this isn't..." He caught himself, realizing every word was only making it worse. My parents were near the entrance again, but now they looked like people watching a storm they couldn't predict. My mother's lips were parted slightly, like she'd just remembered something important and didn't know what to do with it. My father's hands were folded behind his back, stiff. My sister's gaze locked onto mine. For once, it wasn't laced with superiority. It wasn't even apology. It was awe, uneasy, resentful awe. And I just stood there, saying nothing. I wasn't performing. I wasn't even retaliating. The truth had done all the work. The man beside me hadn't flinched. He had said exactly one sentence since arriving. But that had been enough. The crowd began to move subtly. Not physically, yet, but emotionally. You could feel it. People pulling away from the groom, their social proximity shrinking. The way guests start realizing they might have been cheering for the wrong side of a story. A couple who had smiled politely at him earlier were now pretending they didn't know him at all. One of the bridesmaids took a small step back, and still, no one said a word to me. That part didn't hurt. It was revealing. They didn't know how to talk to me once they saw I wasn't small. That's when the groom's jaw tightened. He was losing the room, and he knew it. And that's when he decided to gamble everything he had left. He stepped forward with a different energy now. No more smirks, no more polite posturing. Just raw panic wrapped in fake authority. His voice rose, not yelling, but close. It had that edge, the kind that dares you to disagree. "She's doing this to destroy me," he said. "This whole thing, it's calculated. She's bitter. She couldn't let go, so now she's trying to humiliate me in front of everyone." The air inside the hotel entrance thickened. "I let her stay in my life, for the sake of the kid, because I believed in being decent," he continued. "And this is what I get." His hand gestured toward me like I was a headline in a scandal. "She planned this, probably coached that man to play some power game. You think she owns anything here? Come on." There were gasps, scattered, low, but not for me, for him. Still, I could see it. Some heads turned toward each other again, eyes narrowing, uncertainty creeping in. He saw it too, and he pushed harder. "She's lied before," he said, eyes sweeping across the crowd. "Some of you know. She's good at it, makes herself the victim. Pretends she's harmless. But look, she's just like every manipulator who hides behind a sweet voice and a kid." I felt my daughter flinch beside me. That was the line. And I felt it rise in my chest, that urge to shield, to pull her out of there, to take the easy way again. Just go. Let it end. But then I looked at him. He wasn't angry because I'd done something wrong. He was angry because he was losing control. Security hadn't moved yet, but they were on alert. One hand touched a radio. Another man in a dark suit stepped subtly between the groom and the rest of the space. Not blocking, but watching. The groom didn't care. He was in freefall now. "I want hotel management back here, now," he snapped. "I want documentation. I want records. I want to see whose name is actually on anything she's claiming, because I'm not buying this little performance." And that's when the man beside me stepped forward. No fanfare, No grand gesture, just one step. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't look flustered. He simply said, "The documentation's already here." He turned slightly toward one of the hotel managers who had reappeared with a folder. It was thick, tabbed, official. The groom tried to laugh, but it cracked halfway out. The man continued. "Corporate records, ownership transfers, dates, signatures. You wanted proof. This is it." The manager flipped the folder open and held up a printed sheet and read, "As of November 17th, the controlling interest of this hotel was transferred into the name of Ms. Olivia Brooks, as documented and notarized through—" "That's not real," the groom cut in. "You can fake documents. You can pay someone off. You think I haven't seen that before?" But his voice was faltering, and nobody was backing him now. "I spoke with your assistant last week," the man added calmly. "She confirmed the email you sent requesting a discount on catering, despite claiming full financial coverage. That conversation was recorded, as per hotel policy." The groom's mouth opened, then shut, then opened again. He looked around as if searching for someone to interrupt this. No one did. The room was still now, not quiet because of confusion, but because of clarity. One by one, people stepped back from him, physically, like the stink of desperation had become visible. Someone whispered to their date, then turned and headed toward the ballroom, away from the spectacle. Even his own brother, one of the groomsmen, adjusted his tie, took 2 small steps away, and looked toward the bar. No one said a word to him, and then I spoke, one sentence, not loud, not sharp, just final. "You won't speak to me or my daughter again, not tonight, not ever." That was it. No threat, no scream, no drama, just a line, and it was mine. He looked around, still waiting for someone to save him, someone to pull him out of the hole he'd dug, but no one moved, and that's when I realized the night wasn't ending in chaos. It was ending in consequences. He stood there, stripped of the illusion he wore so well. No one rushed to his defense, no whispered justifications, no reaching hands, just a strange, heavy quiet. And then the sound returned, but it was different now. Voices reemerged, but more cautious. Conversations limped along in broken phrases. Someone laughed too loudly in the corner, trying to reset the mood, but it didn't catch. It hung there, flat. The ballroom was still glowing behind us, music low, but no longer filling the space the same way. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel strong. What I felt was tired, and not just from the night, tired in the way only truth can make you tired. As if finally being seen required more energy than hiding ever did. The groom was no longer shouting. He wasn't even speaking. He looked small now, not in size, but in presence. Hotel security approached, not aggressive, not theatrical, just calm, like men used to removing problems with minimal fuss. They asked him to step outside. He tried to object, but his voice didn't have weight anymore. No one listened. Eventually, he turned and walked, head held high in performance, not pride. He wasn't handcuffed. He wasn't shoved out. He was simply done. That was enough. And for once, I didn't feel the need to watch it all unfold. I turned away before he was fully out of sight. Not long after I saw them, my parents. They stood near the edge of the room, hesitant. My father's hands were in his pockets, which only ever meant one thing. He didn't know what to say. My mother's face was unreadable. Not cold, not warm, just blank, like she'd run out of rehearsed expressions. It was my sister who approached first. She looked older than I remembered. Maybe I just hadn't looked closely in a long time. "Hey," she said, voice soft. I waited. She cleared her throat. "I didn't know it was like that. I didn't see it." I nodded, not out of agreement, just acknowledgement. Mom stepped in next. "You could have told us." I met her eyes. "You could have asked." Silence. Not angry, just honest. I didn't need more. I'm not angry, I added, but I'm not doing this again. My voice didn't shake. My words didn't beg. I'm not asking to be accepted anymore, and I'm not pretending I wasn't hurt. Dad exhaled, his shoulders dropped slightly. Understood. And that was it. No hugs, no big apology, but something real, maybe even respectful. Later, as we stepped out of the building, the cold night air hit my cheeks like a truth I didn't have to brace for anymore. My daughter's hand curled into mine. Her fingers were warm, sticky from cake she'd grabbed earlier, now long forgotten in all the chaos. She looked up at me as we walked toward the car. "Mom," she asked, "why was that man so mean?" I paused. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I wanted to get it right for her. "Because some people feel small inside," I said gently. "And when they're scared, they try to make others feel smaller." She nodded slowly, chewing on the idea. Is he going to stop being mean now? I smiled, sad and proud all at once. I don't know, but tonight, he didn't get to keep being mean to us. That matters. She squeezed my hand, and then silence again. But it wasn't heavy anymore. It just was. We walked slowly through the lot, past cars wrapped in frost, toward a future I didn't need to define tonight. I didn't win anything in there. I didn't leave with applause or closure wrapped in ribbons. But I walked out without shrinking. I didn't gain a family that night. I didn't lose one either. I gained something steadier, the right to take up space without asking. As we reached the car, I tightened my grip on my daughter's hand, not because I was afraid, but because I was finally sure. Some nights don't change who you are. They just prove you never needed to disappear to belong.